Have you ever wondered how a single fort, isolated in the vast wilderness of New York, could play a pivotal role in the outcome of the American Revolutionary War? How a siege that lasted 3 intense weeks could sway the tide of a conflict that shaped the future of a nation? This is the story of Fort Stanwix, a story of a battle that proved the might of a determined few against overwhelming odds. Fort Stanwix. Fort Stanwix, originally built by the British in 1758 during the French and Indian War, was strategically located at the Oneida Carrying Place, a crucial portage between the Mohawk River and Wood Creek. This location was more than just a geographical landmark. It was the gateway to the interior of North America. Whoever controlled Fort Stanwix controlled the critical waterways that linked the Hudson River to the Great Lakes, making it a vital military and trading outpost. By the time the American Revolutionary War broke out, Fort Stanwix had fallen into disrepair. But its strategic importance had not diminished. The Continental Army, understanding the fort's potential as a defensive stronghold, decided to restore and garrison it. In the spring of 1777, Colonel Peter Gansevoort, a young and determined officer from New York, was tasked with this mission. Gansevoort, along with Lieutenant Colonel Marinus Willett and their troops, worked tirelessly to rebuild the fort's defenses, knowing full well that a British attack could come at any moment. As the Continental Army fortified Fort Stanwix, they were unaware that they would soon be facing one of the most challenging sieges of the entire war, a siege that would test their resolve and ingenuity to the limits. The British strategy unfolds. While the Americans were busy fortifying Fort Stanwix, far to the north, British Brigadier General Barry Streetledger was laying out his own plans. The British High Command, under General John Burgoyne, had devised a grand strategy to split the rebellious colonies in two by gaining control of the Hudson River Valley. Burgoyne's plan called for a three-pronged attack. He would lead a force south from Canada, while General William Howe moved north from New York City, and Streetledger advanced from the west through the Mohawk Valley. St. Ledger's force was a diverse coalition of around 1,800 men. It included British regulars from the 8th and 34th Regiments, a loyalist contingent known as the King's Royal Regiment of New York, Hessian mercenaries, and a large force of Native American warriors from various tribes, including the Mohawk, Seneca, and Onondaga. The inclusion of Native American allies was a key part of St. Ledger's strategy, as these warriors were familiar with the terrain and could strike fear into the hearts of the American settlers. The British objective was clear: capture Fort Stanwix, secure the Mohawk Valley, and link up with Burgoyne's forces at Albany. This would cut off New England from the other colonies, delivering a decisive blow to the American cause. As St. Ledger's forces moved toward Fort Stanwix, they were confident of an easy victory. After all, the fort's defenders were vastly outnumbered, and Streetledger believed that the mere presence of his formidable army would be enough to force a surrender. The siege begins. On August 2, 1777, the Siege of Fort Stanwix officially began. St. Ledger's forces, having arrived at the fort, quickly established a perimeter, effectively surrounding the American defenders. The British set up artillery positions and began bombarding the fort's walls, hoping to weaken the defenses and force a surrender. Inside the fort, Colonel Gansevoort and his men were under no illusions about the gravity of their situation. Outnumbered and isolated, with no immediate hope of reinforcements, the defenders knew they were in for a long and grueling fight. But surrender was not an option. Gansevoort, displaying a tenacity that would become legendary, vowed to hold the fort at all costs. As the siege progressed, the British attempted to intimidate the Americans into submission. St. Ledger sent a message to Gansevoort, warning that if the fort did not surrender, he would unleash his Native American allies, who would show no mercy to the defenders or the civilian population. This was not an idle threat. The British and their Native American allies had already carried out brutal raids on American settlements, and the prospect of a similar fate loomed large over Fort Stanwix. But Gansevoort was not swayed. He responded with a bold and defiant message, declaring that the fort would not be surrendered and that the defenders were prepared to fight to the last man. The stage was set for a battle of wills that would determine the fate of the Mohawk Valley and possibly the entire northern campaign. The Battle of Oriskany. As the siege wore on, the defenders of Fort Stanwix received word that a relief force was on its way. Brigadier General Nicholas Herkimer, a veteran of the colonial wars and a respected leader in the Mohawk Valley, had rallied the local militia to come to the fort's aid. Herkimer's force, composed largely of farmers and settlers, was determined to break the siege and relieve their besieged comrades. But on August 6, 1777, As Herkimer's militia approached the fort, they were ambushed by a force of loyalists and Native American warriors in a dense forest near Oriskany Creek. What followed was one of the bloodiest and most brutal battles of the Revolutionary War, the Battle of Oriskany. The fighting at Oriskany was savage and close quarters, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. General Herkimer was mortally wounded early in the battle, but refused to leave the field, directing his men from beneath a tree as the fighting raged around him. The militia, despite being caught off guard and suffering heavy losses, fought with incredible bravery and determination. The Battle of Oriskany was a Pyrrhic victory for the British and their allies. While they managed to inflict severe damage on the American militia, they also suffered significant casualties, particularly among the Native American warriors. The ferocity of the battle and the losses incurred sowed discord and mistrust between the British and their Native American allies, weakening the cohesion of St. Leger's forces. Meanwhile, the defenders of Fort Stanwix seized the opportunity to launch a daring sortie. Under the leadership of Lieutenant Colonel Marinus Willett, a contingent of American soldiers stormed out of the fort and attacked the British camp, capturing supplies and spreading chaos among the besiegers. This bold action further demoralized the British and bolstered the spirits of the American defenders. The turning point. As the siege dragged on and hope for relief dwindled, Major General Benedict Arnold, one of the most daring and resourceful commanders of the Continental Army, was dispatched to lead a relief force to Fort Stanwix. However, Arnold's force was small and insufficient to confront St. Leger's army in a pitched battle. Recognizing the need for unconventional tactics, Arnold devised a bold plan to lift the siege through psychological warfare. Arnold's plan hinged on exploiting the fears and uncertainties of the British and their Native American allies. He captured a known loyalist, Hanyo Schuyler, and convinced him to act as a double agent. Schuyler, under the threat of execution, agreed to the plan. He was sent ahead to the British camp, where he spread alarming rumors of a massive American force rapidly approaching to relieve Fort Stanwix. The deception worked beyond Arnold's wildest expectations. Schuyler's exaggerated reports, combined with the growing dissatisfaction among the Native American warriors, who had suffered heavy casualties at Oriskany and were increasingly disillusioned with the British, created a sense of panic within St. Leger's ranks. The Native American allies, fearing they would be outnumbered and overwhelmed, began to desert en masse. Without their crucial support, St. Leger's position became untenable. On August 22, 1777, after nearly 3 weeks of siege, St. Leger was forced to abandon the siege of Fort Stanwix. In a hasty retreat, the British left behind much of their equipment and supplies, fleeing back towards Canada. The defenders of Fort Stanwix, against all odds, had held out and emerged victorious. The aftermath. The successful defense of Fort Stanwix had far-reaching consequences that extended far beyond the walls of the fort itself. St. Leger's failure to capture the fort and secure the Mohawk Valley was a critical blow to the British strategy in the Northern Theater. His retreat left General Burgoyne's army isolated and vulnerable, leading to the pivotal Battle of Saratoga in October 1777. The American victory at Saratoga, in turn, convinced France to enter the war on the side of the American colonies, providing much-needed military and financial support. This alliance was a turning point in the Revolutionary War, shifting the balance of power in favor of the Americans and ultimately leading to their victory and independence. But the legacy of Fort Stanwix is not only one of military significance. It was here, on August 3, 1777, that the first official United States flag, known today as the Stars and Stripes, was flown in battle. This moment symbolized the emergence of a new nation, fighting not just for survival, but for the principles of liberty and self-determination. Today, Fort Stanwix stands as a national monument. Visitors to the fort can walk through its restored walls, explore its history, and reflect on the profound impact that this small but crucial outpost had on the course of American history. If this story has intrigued you, then make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories from the past. Because history is not just a collection of dates and names, it's the story of who we are and how we came to be. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of adventure alive.